I've spent 6 years building companies. In some phases, I made a lot of money, and in some phases, things were just slowing down. Same business, same me, same team, same skills. So I started asking, what actually changes outcomes? And the answer I got completely surprised me. I used to think that it was probably the strategy, the way we were approaching people, the customer needs, and maybe I'm not reaching out to a lot of people, and so on and so forth. But eventually, and over time, I realized that it all comes down to simply 4 main things. And if you get these 4 main things aligned, you actually can have a much more smooth flowing business as compared to when these are not aligned. And everything feels way more harder than it should. So what are these 4 things? 1, the problem that you choose. 2, the solution that you build. 3, the systems that you run. And 4th, who you are while building it, doing it. And honestly, it was the 4th one that I underestimated massively. There were times when things were moving super fast. We were building, we were closing, we were selling, high energy, high octane environment. Then there were phases that I just slowed down, and the team slowed down. The opportunities were similar outside, but something within me changed. And I realized that when I was not stable internally, everything externally became incredibly hard. And this wasn't just about confidence. It was about the belief that I had. The belief that the problem was actually something that I could solve as an entrepreneur. The belief that the right customers did exist, that the market really wanted the solution. And the belief that this was absolutely worth pushing through. Because if everything is in place without this belief, it is much more harder for the long run. And this belief, or the lack of it, showed up in places that I didn't expect. For example, it showed up when I was out there pushing a new feature on the product. It also showed up in my sales conversations. So even though it is natural, it is supernatural for people that you're talking about a product to either object and say that, oh, this is not there, that is not there, this is not there, that is not there. And you have to systematically work through these objections, and honestly, that makes your product better, or the least it does is that it disqualifies a potential customer. But what happens when you don't have this belief is that you start taking it personally and you start doubting your own product. You start thinking that this product isn't good enough, and then you don't work on it anymore. And as a result, because your internal belief system and your identity is not fully clear, or it is taking a hit, as a result, your business around you takes a hit, your market suddenly disappears, your customers suddenly are buying somebody else's, and so on and so forth. The second thing I got wrong for a very long time is the problem that I chose to work on. I was working hard, yeah, but just not always on the right thing. And by the right thing, I don't necessarily mean that it has to be a big size problem. Yes, eventually you want a lot of people to have that problem that you're solving, but you as a founder must be passionate about solving this problem. So it's not just about picking the problem. And I realized it is actually about how confident that you feel in order to solve that specific problem. That you are someone who can actually solve this problem. I have a signal now. So for me, the signal was that if I had seen multiple solutions in this space, and probably I have also used these solutions myself, and I still feel that this problem wasn't solved right enough, then that's when there is something there. And you should double down on checking whether that is a problem that you're passionate about solving. So there has to be some kind of a founder market fit or a founder problem fit before the whole product market fit or the product problem fit can come in. And when the problem is right, it actually feels a lot more lighter. Like Steve Jobs says, you can work on solving the problem for a much longer period of time. Third, let's talk about solutions. And me being the solution-oriented entrepreneur, this was one that was very, very uncomfortable. Some ideas, they felt amazing. Like when I built a product in the Web3 space, it felt like wild, wild west. It was, in fact, one of the investors told us, man, Priya, this idea is truly wild, wild west. It is something that some of the guys would actually invest in. So these kind of things feel amazing. But once you build it, you put it in front of the real people out there, things change. The market is your only truth. And whatever comes from the market is what you need to learn and improve your product. Sometimes the solution doesn't have to be completely new. It is something that has probably been there. It is probably done a million times. Have you looked at the number of database softwares that are there? I mean, there is already Oracle. There was always Microsoft Access, but still we have Postgres today. We have NeonDB today. We have Supabase today, all solving the same problem through their different solutions, because behind them, the founder thought that, okay, there are great solutions that are doing some things really well, but they're not doing some things very well. And hence they looked at that specific problem, felt passionate that they could solve it, and then created a solution that actually hits. So coming back, the solution doesn't have to be completely new. It can be similar, it can be better, it can even be complementary. What matters more is who is the solution for? Who is going to actually use this? And more importantly, who is going to pay for it? One of the simple ways that I think about this is, when I think about the problem and when I think about the solution that I'm building, is what is the job the customer actually is hiring your product for? Now, what that means is, let's say if you are a company that is doing delivery services. So what is the job the customer is going on a Grab or a Zomato to do? Is to, solve hunger, is to solve food, is to solve for happiness and good experiences, ease of getting food. That is the job that they're hiring your product for. So when you start thinking about what is the job that they're eventually going to be doing, your solutions in the space also become less of a wild, wild west amazing solution and more catered to the customer. So if that becomes clear, what is the job that your solution is going to be doing for the end user or the customer, then it becomes a lot more simpler. Finally, fourth thing, it's systems. Now, this is where either everything actually compounds and helps you scale, or you really remain stuck. There were times when I was working a lot, but things were not repeating, which means I was doing the same kind of proposals again. We had a template and stuff, but I was still doing the thinking. My team was still doing the pre-sales things. We were doing the same thing over and over again manually. So that is extra effort without that level of return that we're actually looking for. And eventually this is going to exhaust you. And hence systems are very important. And I think I made this mistake early on, right? I started thinking of systems very early. And honestly, you don't need to start thinking of systems that early. Many a times, new founders, what do? They are very excited about the fact that they are new entrepreneurs and they're going to work on this amazing solution that's going to one day make $100 million in business. What they start doing is, okay, let's read how do we do sales, because we don't know how to do sales. So we go to HubSpot. HubSpot is a blog, and HubSpot through their blog tells you that you need to buy HubSpot, and that is how you can do sales. Not true. So this is where you are beginning to think of systems way too early. I don't think that is right. Start thinking of systems only when something is already repeating, which means you have identified who is your customer and who is actually a customer only if they're willing to pay for your product or services, right? So you've identified that persona, who this customer is, who is willing to pay for your product or service. And then once you know, the next thing that you think about is how can I get more of these customers? How can I reach out to more such people, right? Where are they? What kind of messaging that I need to do so I can reach out to more? What are the channels that I need to use so I can reach out to more such customers? So that is when you have started your systems thinking. And then you start thinking, okay, now that I have reached out to these many people, or this is the system I'm going to use to reach out, how do I connect it back to, let's say, the of the sales, right? So that is when you're thinking about systems. So systems thinking comes a much later, but it should come once you've started repeating things. So in conclusion, systems are not about starting something. Yeah, don't think of systems on day one. Systems are about repeating what already works. And it is actually a great way to compound and scale your business. And you can apply this thinking to many things, not just your customers. You can think about your hiring processes. You can think about your delivery processes, all of that. Finally, so for a very long time, I just focused on each of these things individually, right? And I realized that it is actually the alignment of all of this that comes through with founder and the founding team's mindset as the base. That is your fertile land where you're able to do all of this, right? So it is important to keep your mind, your belief, your identity very much like $100 million company. In fact, Paul Graham, in one of his essays, says that if you really want to be $100 million founder of a $100 million business, then the best way is to become one. And that becoming becomes in your head first. And then later it translates. So the way you do it is really aligning all of these places, all of these pieces. And with this channel, I'm honestly doing this all over again. The next few episodes, I'm going to break down each of these topics based on mindset, the problems, the solutions that you can solve for, and so on and so forth. And if you're building something, then I would absolutely love to know about it. I will be inviting some really amazing founders who are in their third, fourth, fifth year of business, who have made some level of recurring revenue. And we're going to talk to them and we're going to understand what works and what didn't work and how they learned and how they pivoted and so on and so forth. So this podcast is going to be a wealth of information, especially if you're already an entrepreneur who is looking to become the top 1% entrepreneur, and or if you are thinking of starting your own business on your own. Thank you. Keep watching the Out of Office podcast.